Hi, I'm Sienna. I'm 19 years old and I'm from Clio, Michigan.
Sienna, is there one major event where you've been discriminated against at Clio?
When I was in preschool, I was called a blackie and the N-word and a big nose, and the girls said they didn't want to play with me because of my nose.
Did you ever notice faculty and staff ignoring times where you've come forward about discrimination and they've done nothing about it?
Yeah, I went to both the vice principal and the main principal, and they only issued out apologies to me and said they would do a seminar basically stating that kids shouldn't speak on insensitive subjects when really the N-word isn't an insensitive subject, it's just racism blatantly.
Did they ever do any of the seminars against racism like the school said they would?
No, they were supposed to do it after Thanksgiving break, and then we were already in May graduating and nothing was taken for account.
How long have you endured discrimination in schools?
Since preschool, so about 13 years, and it's on and off again, but it got the worst, I'd say, around the transition from 8th grade to freshman year, where kids got a little bolder, the words got a little meaner. It was more pointed and blatant, and they were more bold with it because administration never did anything, so they weren't really afraid to say the rude things to me.
Do you hear the N-word being used a lot in school?
Yeah, every other day. There were a lot of instances where I just bump into someone in the hallway and they tell me watch out and they use the hard R. That was, I'd probably say, happening 3 times a week for my whole high school career. And in other terms, they just make slave jokes or call me a blackie, tell me to sit in the back of the bus.
Do you hear the N-word in school mainly from white people or people of color?
I hear it more from the Hicks of the school because I feel like they're more opinionated when it comes to the topics of race, but I've never heard it considering that the population of black kids at our school was so low. It was like 98% white kids that would speak it.
Has there ever been a time where you were afraid to be at school because of the color of your skin?
There was my first week of preschool, these 2 twin boys that were so much trouble that they had to sit in the front seat of the bus, and I was assigned to sit next to them, so in the seat across. And they not only were perverted, but they would call me the N-word repeatedly, a little black girl, speaking in a way that you'd only hear in like 1940. But they'd also make gestures like slitting throats or a gun to their head. And that was not confusing only, but like really scary because, you know, I don't know why these kids didn't like me. I was only 4, and they were not held accountable by the bus driver or the school, so I was kind of stuck with it.
Has a teacher ever said anything racist to you but try to play it off as a joke?
I got into a 15-minute argument about whether or not I was mixed. One of the aiding teachers had told me that there was no way I could be 100% black, that I'd have to have like a white parent of some sort because no black person could be as light as me. They also called my hair nappy when it wasn't, and they pulled my hair, kind of treated me like a Barbie doll, and that was blatant disrespect that they also didn't get in trouble for.
How would you change the school system to lower or diminish racism?
I would say that the administration would need to be as strict as they are with drugs, the same way that they would be with hazing. It's in the handbook, it's written, and it calls for suspension, and yet they don't do it. There are many complaints, and it's like they're almost afraid of how the parents or the student body would react to that they dismiss it. But I think they need to toughen up because it's honestly unacceptable, and there are tons of girls at that school that, you know, deal with their hair being pulled or crying or being called the N-word and no one does anything. So I would say they would need to tighten it up and make like a no nonsense type policy, because they're just letting stuff like slide through the cracks, and there's no need for that. If they're just gonna let it go, there's no need for an administration because there's no discipline.
How has racism in school affected you mentally?
Pretty negatively. I already had social anxiety, so even showing up was a battle. But on top of that, being told that my skin was ugly or that black girls smell, that we would never get boyfriends, that our hair was gross and nappy, was just like the little degrading every day that I really didn't need. It wasn't necessary, and it definitely wasn't beneficial to my mental growth, because even if I went home and tried to cheer myself up, it's still going to be in the back of the head. And when you get used to that for like 8 years straight or 9 years straight, you start to believe it, and then you're going downhill with the rest of them.
Have people in school ever said anything about you having a white parent and being adopted, and how has it affected you?
Oh, jeez. Yeah, it's been a constant running joke. Being told that I don't qualify, that I'm not accepted into the Black community, that I'm only proper because I have white parents, which is rude to assume that if you're Black you can't speak properly. But I had a lot of people tell me or laugh that, oh, so do you still eat fried chicken? Or is your house stocked with Kool-Aid? Just assuming a bunch of stuff about my family that was really rude. It was out of bounds, and just inappropriate in general. So there was a lot of assumptions that I hated Black people myself because I was raised in a white family, even though my siblings are also of color. So there was a lot of judgment from that too, almost like I was betraying my community, even though I didn't have a choice in who adopted me, and they didn't treat me wrong. They let me hang out with people of my skin tone, so it really wasn't a relevant thing for them to say.
Have you ever endured racism from your own community?
All the time. From, I think the first time where I actually got it pointed out was 3rd grade. I was really advanced, and I was taking classes. I think I was taking 5th grade classes when I was in kindergarten, so I kind of wasn't really with my grade at that time. But then in 3rd grade, my grammar was really articulate, and I was using the words right, and apparently that wasn't cool. So I got teased a lot. Again, they were like, oh, it's because your parents are white, they taught you right. Saying stuff like, oh, you're too white to be Black, you're whitewashed, you know, saying I was a disgrace. And if I met up with other like girls or boys of my color, they didn't want me. They did not want to hang out with me. They didn't want to talk to me, because I betrayed them. And how dare I act white, when really in the case that I realized as I got older, the music I listen to, the food I eat, the only person telling me that I'm not Black is the Black community. No white person was like, yeah, by the way, you're not Black. The Black community was like, yeah, by the way, you can be Black, you don't qualify. It's not an audition, it's my DNA. There's nothing saying that I'm not Black just because I listen to Panic at the Disco. So that was consistent, I think, from like 15. Like, it really got aggressive at 15 to like 18. They really wanted to like make sure I knew. And that was kind of hard because I want to connect with people, and I couldn't because I was unwelcome. So yeah.
What advice would you give to others in the Black community going through racism?
I would say that only the insecure comment on those who have a threatening sense of self-esteem. So if you ever encounter positions like that, to disregard them, to pay no account to them. They don't deserve attention or recognition, and they're just seeking a gold star for something that only losers do. So to work on you, to continue to work on you, and to give your time to those who really deserve it.
What about reverse racism and the fact of people of color being racist towards white people?
Sweats nervously again. I honestly, I can't say I've seen it. I think, I wouldn't say it's racism, but I would say that there is, well, I don't know how you would word it, but I would say that there is a sense of judgment, of prejudice against whether or not one white person is the same as every white person. But the saying that, you know, one bad apple could ruin the bunch, I wouldn't say that is. I think a lot of people that aren't white are misunderstood, as are people of color, so I think it goes both ways. But again, I've never seen it in person, so if someone could show me, I'm sure it might. I don't disregard it, but I do know that I've known a few black people who are more than disrespectful towards a white person, but I wouldn't say it's in like a segregated or a racist way.
Okay, because the reason I asked that is because I just remembered something from when me and you were in class one day. You had asked me something, and you were like, wait, is that racist? And I was like, what? And you were like, is that racist towards you, like, towards white people? It's like, there is no such thing. In my, like, in my personal opinion, I don't
Right.
think there's any such thing as being racist towards a white person because we don't have a history of people hating us.
Right.
Like, yeah, okay, white women have gone through, pardon my language, they have gone through shit. And, like, gays have gone through it, but no white man has ever had to endure anything remotely oppressing.
I think that for a lot of people, like you said, I did say that. I do say it a lot because I never want to. I know how it feels to have the boundaries stepped over, for people to disregard my feelings, my emotions, or maybe just facts in general, right? And to say things that are so rude and so degrading to me and belittling. So, in the sense of making sure that I'm not offending anybody that's not of color, there are a lot of things that I've said apparently that are questionable. But when it comes to assumptions, I don't know any assumptions of a white person. Just like, people say, oh yeah, you must drink Kool-Aid for instead of milk for breakfast, and you might eat watermelon, and that just must be your diet, like that's what you live off of. Stuff like that. I can't think of anything, besides, the common Karen joke, but that's not racism, that's just funny. And I think it's just like a caution, because no one wants to ever offend anyone. And since I'm not aware, like you said, I just can't think of anything of black people being racist against white people because the lack of oppression. So it's not common. You don't see it. But I never want to risk it either. If it is a thing, I don't want to risk, being disrespectful towards anyone.
Yeah. If you could go back through school, would you continue to go to public school, or would you be homeschooled or private school?
The side of me that would like to hold a grudge against the cowards of the administration would love to go back and scream at them and shake my finger and hit them in the head with a chalkboard, just because I didn't get justice and I didn't see administration doing what administration's meant to do, which is discipline and hold things in place. So I feel like that was a pathetic move of the school, and they should be ashamed of that. So at the same time, I'd love to go back to redo, to show them what I've made of, and like to say what I wanted to say then that would have gotten me detention. At the same time, the strain it put on my mental health was absolutely atrocious. I mean, what 4-year-old knows the N-word? You know what I'm saying? I was on the bus with Rebecca Kaiser, and she pulled out a map and she pointed at Niger, and she told me to pronounce it like Tigger with an N. And that was the first time I'd ever said it, and I didn't even know what that word was, and everyone started laughing at me, and it was horrible. And I went home crying because as a 4-year-old, I'd gotten in trouble for something I didn't even know what I'd done. So I felt like I was already at a disadvantage. But at the same time that I want to go again, to prove my strength, I lost a lot of time being sad because I was the literal black sheep of the school. You know what I'm saying? I was the butt of all jokes. I was the person they looked at for dancing and like assumptions, and it just wasn't fun. I felt like a clown. I felt like I was in a fucking circus. Pardon my language, but I would like to be homeschooled again. I've been homeschooled before. But I feel like it's not fair that I miss out on the experience of school, of the parties, of the football games and the volleyball games and the wins and the losses. I feel like it's not fair for me to have to sacrifice living as a kid, the fun that other kids get that I wouldn't get because some people couldn't keep their mouths shut. So I'd be homeschooled and say, screw the public system and live happily with a good mental health.